Welcome to the course Environmental Impact Assessment. In the previous lectures, we developed understanding of air policy. So we looked at very domain-specific laws and policies in place. So today we'll cover, in this session we'll cover key legislation, guidance and standards related with water and soil, land and geology. And about this detailed methods, we'll be looking at the method section, where we'll see what key legislation, guidance and standards are involved in this. So our coverage will include, we'll look at the key concepts of water, then we'll look at key legislation, guidance and standards for water which are there, and then we'll look into soil, land and geology and the legislations related with that. So looking at water, we see the water study is fundamental part of EIA, and as it is required in all kind of development work. So if you'll think about various kind of development projects, you cannot think about whether it would be using water, and then it would be influencing what there would be impact on water. So for example, for the cement factory, while providing environmental description as a professional while preparing environmental impact assessment, you would be required to look into the surface air quality of nearby water sources and surface drains. These all have to be confirmed, and then you might have to take, as per the guidelines provided, you might have to take minimum these water quality from 8 locations. And even hydrological system, how the water is moving, should be prepared, and how your project is going to interfere with the water movements should also be checked. So you see how much it's going to be really required. And similarly, you can see in another example of chemical fertilizers factory, and in the project description, you have to tell where you're going to get the water from, what will be the total water requirements, and what approvals you have got from the concerned department. So all that will be needed. And you might have to also work out the water balance cycle data, like including quantity of effluent which you're going to generate, the waste you're going to generate, and then how much you're going to recycle, how much you're going to reuse, and how much you're going to discharge. And then you also need to maintain quality of receiving water body, and to minimize effluent discharge into the receiving water body. And then you would also be required to give the details of the effluent treatment plant, and also mode of disposal, how you're going to dispose all those waste which you'll be generating. So there's lot will be involved with water. So in your environmental description, you would be also giving in your baseline data, on water, the surface water, what's the quality of source, which could, from where you're getting, and which could be dam or river or nearby water body. So all that needs to be provided in detail. So, and there is anticipated impact on water. So what kind of impact it would have. Further, the impact on many other components, there would be direct impact on water, but there would be also indirect impacts, like we had studied about various categories or categories of impact. So you have seen direct and indirect. So water is going to have a lot of indirect impact also. So impact on biodiversity, on soil and human health. With this background in mind, let us look into the legislation, guidance and standards for water. So the key legislation, guidance and standard for water involve all the at the international level. Examples you will find is the Water Framework Directive, WFD, and this is for the European countries you find, and Water Framework Directive. This particularly helps to identify what kind of impact, how it is going to influence, deteriorate the ecological status as a result of the development activities. So whatever you're going to do, how it's really going to influence that. And then WFD, it requires the hydromorphic conditions. It creates, you have to create that hydromorphic conditions where you need to tell the how you are complying, how you're assessing and complying with the regulations. So, what's the water condition and how you are really taking care of how you are complying with all the requirements. So, trying to understand what is hydromorphic. Hydromorphic condition is typically described as interrelationship between the flow, how the water is flowing, and then the channel parameter, and then also the so all that has to be given, and geomorphological baseline information like what's the condition there. How that all needs to be given, the formation, what form it has. So, that all needs to be provided here in the EIA document as per the Water Framework Directive. So, typically Water Framework Directive compliance assessment forms a technical appendix to a surface water in an EIA chapter. So, how you are really doing it, you might have to give it in the appendix section, the entire detail thing. Further flood risk assessment has to be done, and you need to show that how you are minimizing the likelihood of any flood happening in the new project, and how you are going to handle it if that flooding or flooding happens in somewhere nearby places. Okay, so now looking at the policies, if you look at the World Bank requires all the proposals EIA of the project which are seeking funding through the bank, they all need to have refer to the environmental assessment source book. So, within that policy, if you look at is particularly 4.07 is concerned specifically with water resource management. So, here it gives you the policy, how you are going to take care of all the things, and bank involvement in water resource management includes support for what all things it considered. It considers flood control, it considers potable water, sanitation facilities, water for productive activities, and in the manner that is economically viable. So, whichever way you are doing it, you are able to economically sustain it, and also environmentally it is sustainable, and it should also take care of the socially equitability. That means everyone should get water. So, that has to be given. So, bank also supports the borrowers in key priority areas, and also cross sectoral impacts in the regional setting. So, like how it is going to have like impact on the river basin and so on, and then how you are also taking care of the restoration, preservation of the aquatic ecosystems, and how you are avoiding waterlogging and then the salinity problem. So, that all developers who are developing this need to take care of all these aspects. And then it also the World Bank also specifies pollutions and how what kind of measures can be adopted to keep the emission levels at the normally acceptable, which is acceptable standards as per the World Bank. And EIA reports, when you prepare EIA report and from the World Bank's perspective, it needs to take into account all the variations in pollution preventions and measures which would be you have to comply by the local country specific guidelines and laws and acts. So, looking at the institutions involved, we have Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Then also we have CPCB at the central level and SPCB, State Pollution Control Board, at the state level. And you have Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, along with you also have Central Public Health and Environmental Engineering Organization, CPHEEO, and then you also see Ministry of Jal Shakti. So, all these institutional arrangements are there in place related with water. And when you need to look for the acceptable range of water quality, then you look at the government bodies and agencies. So where do I find what is the acceptable range? So mostly the government bodies and agencies maintain that, and they are the one who set and regulate the water quality uh, data, like including even the groundwater protection and the geomorphological, the surface feature, how of the earth, like what all is there. All these things are maintained by them. Among all the standards, the most strict standards, if you'll see, the most strict standard is concerning the drinking water. So all the standards which you're going to see, the most stringent one is for the drinking water. So in India, you find in Indian standards for drinking water specification, and which provides permissible and desirable limits for various parameters in drinking water as per Bureau of Indian Standards (BIS). These provide specification for potable water. So these standards are prepared to check the water quality of the resource from where you are drawing water, and to check the effectiveness of the water treatment. So these are used for checking the effectiveness of water treatment and supply by the concerned authority. So whichever authority is treating the water and supplying the water, so it is used for checking that. So in the image in the left hand side, you can see the CPCB website and then the link to all the standards. In the right hand side, you can see drinking water standards, which shows different water characteristics and acceptable limits and methods of test. So you can see here all those characteristics like related with color, odor, pH value, taste, then turbidity and total dissolved solids. So all these are, so your project should meet all these requirements, acceptable limits. So you would also find standard rules for wastewater for domestic and industrial sources. In the image, you can see the standards for emissions or discharge of environmental pollutants for various industries available as CPCB sites. A link is provided for your reference. You can see here for all the industries. Then in the following image, you can see general standard for discharge of environmental pollutants through effluent. One of the first column, you can see the parameters such as color and odor, suspended solids. In the second column, you will find what should be the range in the inland water surface, like what should be range in the public sewer, and what if the water is at the discharge at the land for irrigation, and then if it is discharged at the marine and the coastal areas. So you can find all those values here. So in the following image, you can see general STP discharge standards here, sewage treatment plant discharge here. It shows different parameters, inland water supply, public sewers, land irrigation, marine ecosystem here. You can see here as well for STP. So again, you can see here the recommended norms of treated sewage quality for different uses by CPHEEO. Such as toilet flushing, fire protection, vehicular exterior washing, and so on. You can see here. Source to all of these has been provided to you. And in this image, you can see the technology performance, how which technology performs. So in the again this image, you can see different acts related with water, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, Environmental Protection Act 1986, National Environment Tribunal Act. You can see Urban Sanitation Policy, National Mission for Clean Ganga, National Water Policy. So depending on where your projects are and what it has to comply with. So again in this image, you can see the designated best use, class of water, and criteria for by CPCB here. So you can see that you have class of water A, B, C, D, and E, and what is the criteria used. And on the left hand side, you can see designated best use, like which ones is for drinking water, what's for outdoor bathing and drinking water purpose, and then for the wildlife and fisheries and irrigation, industrial cooling, control, waste disposal. So, we also have center guidelines on groundwater use, prescribing penalties for extraction water without permission and for other offences. Link is also provided to you, so you can also see here. These are the guidelines available. You can also see standards for wastewater from domestic and industrial sources, so how that has to be handled. And these are especially for the case for low flow periods as well as for the flood standards. So, when there is low flow period where there is lesser water in the river, and then the flood standards, and that time what has to be taken care of. And when we look at low flow period, what does that mean? It is like flow may be required, a specific flow may be required in a stream or a river to support aquatic fauna like whatever is there and flora. And one method, if you look at the method for calculating it, it's like flow in stream flow incremental methodology which is there. So, the low flow period is specified, and then also as per the flood standards you have to see this. So, that was about the water, and you have seen what kind of acts and all kinds of guidelines which are there related with water. So, when you do prepare EIA and when you study, then you might have to, for your baseline assessments and all these, you have to refer to these. So, now moving on to soil, land and geology. So, in this we will see the key policy legislation in this domain. So, with respect to protection of geology, there are limited policy interventions. So, we do not see many policy intervention. So, the very first initiative to protect the geological significant areas which sustain the biodiversity was taken in USA 1906. And then later we see in UK, they took initiative in 1949 through National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act. Then we see IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, in their 5th World Conservation Congress in 2012. At the international level, geological heritage was formally recognized. So, they recognized it, addressed it in this 5th World Conservation Congress in 2012. And then we also see UNESCO in collaboration with IUCN prepared inventories for global geosites program and other regional and international sites of geological interest. So, you can see all this information, and the link is also provided to you if you want to visit this. So, we also find UNESCO global geoparks, which are like places of geological significance at the international level. And we see that 195 member states have ratified this in 2015, and then now we see 120 parks from 33 countries which are there. So, whenever you do EIA, you have to take note of all these things. They are important for the conservation and protection and management of the fossils and stratigraphy, minerals or other geological interests. So, all these things have to be taken care of, and geoparks have scientific and amenity value. So, a lot of research also goes there. So, that has to be acknowledged there, and one also needs to see the exposure of value to the wildlife, all these have to be checked here. So, you see that many countries have laws and regulatory procedure for protection of land, and particularly if a development displaces soil. So, any development, like if you are changing from agriculture, from forestry to agriculture, you are going to change the land form. Then if you are changing from agriculture to urban, you are going to change the soil form. So, many countries have laws and regulations and procedures for that. So, here we briefly consider the wider international agenda set by the United Nations. So, that you may see here. So, you have Agenda 21, which we talked earlier also. So, which came up from 1992 Earth Summit Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So, it is in the UN Action Plan for voluntary implementation by multilateral organizations and individual governments to implement that. So, Agenda 21 is concerned with programs to integration of environment and development to achieve sustainable development. We had seen that. So, for land and soil, Agenda 21 has a number of objectives which are concerned, like you can see, including management of land resources and fragile ecosystem. How do you manage that? Combating deforestation, desertification, and promoting sustainable agriculture. So, all these are covered in Agenda 21. So, we also see sustainable development goals that they are linked with soil, land, and this. So, we see that sustainable development goal 2, 12, all these are connected. You also see sustainable development goals 15. So, sustainable development goal 2 talks about the sustainable agriculture with like how that has to be taken care of. So, it also deals with land, soil. Then you also see SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production pattern. So, how you are going to use the resources, sustainable management and efficient use of natural resource. Then you see in SDG 15 sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, and then it has like targets like how you're ensuring conservation, how you're promoting implementation of sustainable management of forest, and how you're going to reduce deforestation. At the same time, how you're going to handle desertification, how you're going to restore the damaged land and soil, and how you're going to integrate the entire ecosystem and biodiversity value in the national, local planning and development processes. So, how that has to be done. So, that target is set in SDG 15. Further, we see that in when we review European Union and the UK. So, you see that European Commission adopted soil thematic strategy, and a few European member states have specific legislation on soil protection. Then you also see DEFRA, which is Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So, they also set like government's approach to how they are going to handle sustainable use and protection of the soil. So, those things are there. So, whenever EIA is prepared, they all have to be referred. And then this particularly introduced the concept of protecting soil function. So, how the soil's function can be really protected and it's so that it can contain the function which it is required to in terms of the vegetation, habitat, all that it supports. So, it is valuable in respect to wider range of environmental objectives, just not just the protecting the soil, but then protecting the entire ecosystem. And then you also see national planning policy framework, which provides protection of good quality agricultural land within land use planning system. So, that also needs to be taken care of. Then you find several annexures in European EIA directives which are concerned with this, which guides on natural resource, how these particularly with soil, land and water and biodiversity, how those things have to be incorporated, taken care of. And you also see UK has comprehensive guidance on soil handling for land restoration. So, when you need to restore the land, how you are going to do. So, this will be all useful when you are handling, preparing mitigation. So, with respect to contaminated land, you need to, in your EIA process, you need to document everything, like what will be the receptor, where all what level of contamination is there, and how what kind of changes would happen on the receptor. So, all those things have to be provided, and there can be overlap between like how you are how the contamination is happening and how mitigation would be done. So, you need to take care of all those aspects here. Further, IFC performance standards also provides you with all the like pollution prevention within PS3. So, how the clients are required to avoid release of pollutants, and how if avoiding is not possible, then how they are supposed to minimize it. So, all those guidelines are provided. In the United States, you see that there's a legislation relating to land contamination, which was introduced through Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act. And then you also see specific legislation on contaminated land in other countries, which was followed, like land quality management. It was provided in other 14 countries. And you also see IFC performance standards, GIIPP standards, for which is like for good international practices. You can see those. So those are provided here, and then you can also see Australia and UK have also have their own laws in place. You also find legislation in UK dealing with contaminated land, and which relies on the principle of suitable for use approach, where you look at the remedial action has to be provided, and only if there is unacceptable risk to the health, property or environment. So you can see guidance and planning policy document in UK, the range of documents which are there: Environmental Protection Act of 1990, then statutory guidelines, National Planning Policy Framework, guidance, communities and local government, guidance on land affected by contamination, communities and local government, again you see 2014, Water Act 2003, then you also see Scotland and all the planning policies which are there, and then you also see Northern Ireland where they provide this. So this list is given to you, you can refer to them. This is just for your information here. So in UK you see that planning and pollution control systems are separate, but they complement to the entire act process. In this image you can see the Pollution Control Act rule and notification mentioned in the Pollution Control Law report by CPCB. You can find guidelines related to land, soil and geology mentioned in this report. All the related acts and rules are highlighted here in red color box. So you can see all of these is concerning in this part 3 is concerning with land, soil and geology in the Indian context. So in the report, Environmental Impact Assessment Guidance Manual, Ministry of Environment, Forest, Government of India, you see that under highway section for protection and land and soil, they have mentioned the checklist for erosion control for highways. So what all things you need to take care of. So you can see highway project in hilly areas, the checklist for erosion control is mentioned when you are developing highway projects here. So like questions like, does the road construction project estimate provide for necessary measure against soil erosion, have soil maps and aerial photographs studied, and investigations have been made to locate areas or sections with high erosion potential. So all these things have to be seen here. So in further you see that similarly they have also mentioned about the guidelines for geological data for measurement of assessment purpose. So as you can see the table of standard for that, you can see that hydraulic conductivities, you can see specific yield of different soil formation, then you can also see typical porosities of soil. So you can see here, so these are all guidelines and standards are provided while you work for EIA. You need to align by that, abide by that. You can find the different attributes of land and land use environmental data with respect to their sampling frequency and network and measurement methods. So that's also provided by ministry here. So these guidelines are provided. You can see the attributes, the sampling, measurement methods, and how you have to take. So you can see the land environment within that, soil, what all things you have to take care of, particle size distribution, texture, pH, electrical conductivity, and then how you have to take sampling. So if you're doing network sampling, one surface sample from each village has to be taken, and then frequency season wise, and like for every season it has to be taken, and how you're going to measure that. So collected and analyzed as per soil analysis reference. So which book you're going to refer, that all has been given. Likewise, you see how you have to take care of land use and landscape. So you have to provide location code, total project area, you have to look into topography, drainage, all these have to be seen. and then at least 20 points along the boundary. So you need to, as per the norms, you have to take 20 points along the boundary, and then measurement can be GPS, global positioning system, the topo sheets, and how you can use satellite imageries, and it might vary with project specification. So that is what we saw today. So summarizing this particular session, we saw that water, we looked into water, key considerations, and then the legislations associated with that, and what references do we follow in Indian context. Then we saw soil, land, and geology, and then what are the key legislation and what kind of references we follow here. So that was for today, and these were the references which we used for this particular session. So you can go and read them, and also like all the links which have been provided, you can see them as well. And these are the suggested watch and read for this particular segment. And please feel free to ask questions. Let us know about any concerns you have. Do share your opinions, experiences, and suggestions. Looking forward to interacting and co-learning with you while exploring AIA. Thank you.